Thank you so much. So I'm glad to see you all here. Yeah, so I'm a front-end developer with 20 years of experience, and I still love my job. And yeah, sounds weird. And my favorite part of this job is building perfect user experience. And if you think of it, this job starts way before the development phase. So I'd like to show you the brief software delivery lifecycle as I see it. Basically, at first we collect the requirements from our customers, and then we build some project specification, documentation, the agreements that we came to with our customers about what we are going to build. And after this phase, some magic happens and we can start the development process. And this magic is actually design. This word has a lot of different meanings, but for the purpose of this talk, I will call design something that is usually done by product designers, which is kind of a circular definition, but still. I would like to divide this job, the designer's job, in 3 major tasks. And the main obvious part of the designer's job is ensuring everything is beautiful, the aesthetics. Sometimes separate designers do that, sometimes one designer do all 3, and this is obviously not the only part of what designers do. The other major task for a designer is information display. It's about how we should present the information we're going to show to the user, what we are showing and what we can omit, what pages or screens we're going to have, how everything will be placed there, and so on. And the third part is user interaction design. This is about what happens when user makes some actions, how the UI behaves according to these actions. And the third one, this one, it is actually optional because not every UI has a user interaction. For example, there are landing pages, you can have a business card or even a magazine maybe. Not every interface is interactive, right? And the first one, the aesthetics, is also optional because you not always want your UI to be much beautiful. For example, there are back office tools, internal services, something that is not faced to end users, and you don't need much beauty for that. And in this case, front-enders usually use component libraries or design systems if they have to just make everything look not ugly, have some pre-designed standard components to use in their interface. And yeah, it happened that in my career, my 2 most recent teams didn't have a dedicated designer. So we built all the UIs on our own, and it worked to some extent. And it is not a rare case, actually, and teams without a designer can happen not only in some tiny startups, but also in big companies. For example, big companies have a lot of back office tools and internal services, and they usually don't involve designers or involve just a little resource of the designer. Yeah, so if we don't need the beauty, let's imagine we don't have a designer, we don't need the beauty, we still have to do the 2 other parts of the designer's job. So we can't just keep that one, but can we do this job ourselves? Do you think we can? Yes, of course we can. And there is a thing that can help us with this task, and it is called a wireframe. Do you know what a wireframe is? Just raise your hand if you know. Okay, someone, okay, great. But I'll tell you anyway because I have my slides. So a wireframe is a sketch or a blueprint of the user interface. And it's a low fidelity representation that concentrates on functionality instead of visual details. Yeah, there are also some concepts that are often confused with wireframes. So there is a prototype. A prototype is an interactive imitation of the app or like the service you are building. And wireframe is something different. So a prototype is aimed to give you the idea, the feeling of using your product. And wireframe is a little bit different. And there is also a mock-up, which is also a sketch of the UI. But the difference is that mock-up is aimed to demonstrate visual details. So it's kind of testing your visual representation instead of functionalities. And sometimes wireframes can be confused with pixel-perfect designs. They are obviously different, but sometimes they can be confused, and I will tell you later how it can happen with you or someone else. Yeah, and there are actually two slightly different types of wireframes. The first one is about the information display. So the second designer's task I showed you before. And the other one is about user interaction. I'll show you a couple of examples here. So the first wireframe, these are both wireframes, but the first wireframe was drawn by the designer to try and place everything on the page. And it demonstrates what information we're going to show, how it will be ordered, what goes above the fold line, what is the layout, how many columns we have, and so on. And the second one is more about user stories, and it demonstrates what actions can be performed with this UI and how it reacts to these actions. And of course, there can exist the mix of these two, but I would prefer just divide tasks and do them separately. But you can do whatever you prefer. I would like to focus on the second one more, because it's the most useful for the case when you don't have a designer in your team. Yeah, so wireframing is extremely helpful for such teams. Why? It is helpful in two different ways. The first way is while you are drawing it or someone else is drawing it, it becomes an implementation in miniature. What I mean by this? If you are a developer, you probably had the experience when you write some code and at some point you realize that the specification of the product you are building is inconsistent, not complete, it needs some amendments. And after changing this specification accordingly, you had to throw away a lot of your code. It can be prevented by wireframing before starting the development process, because you come up with the same questions you would come up when you're coding, while you're just drawing the squares. So it saves your time and saves you a lot of thrown away code. And the second way a wireframing can help you is when it's finished. It's never finished because it evolves with your product, but at some point it looks kind of finished and it becomes your friendly visual documentation for the whole team. For the developers, how helpful is it? It becomes great help for API design and designing your front-end infrastructure. So it's especially helpful for front-enders, but for back-enders as well. And any other technical discussions get much more simple when you have a wireframe in front of your eyes. Also, it improves your time delivery estimations, because when you have your product in front of your eyes, like if you're a front-ender, you can even count how many pages there are, how many complex components you're going to implement, and you can just multiply it by some average estimation, and you get a really good estimate number, really precise. And also, if you are going to involve some external people to this project at some point, for example, like it can be anyone, a copywriter, an illustrator, or some like designer or external manager, you can show them this wireframe and they can much quicker dive into what you're doing and understand what is needed from them. So if you compare text documentation with a wireframe wins because, like as you probably know, a human being perceives information visually much quicker than while reading. And this is especially helpful if you are dealing with unfamiliar domains. What I mean by this, let's have two examples. One is when we are, for example, building an online shop. We are reading the specification and we know all the words, like what is a product, a price, shopping cart, checkout, discount, and so on. So we have these brain connections between these entities. And the other example is we are implementing, for example, some medical or scientific interface, and we read the specification, and half of the words are unfamiliar to us. And even if we've read it several times and we understood everything, we still don't have this intuitive connection in our brain to quickly understand what is going on. So for such projects, wireframing is especially helpful if you just grow these connections slowly in your brain. I have a couple of images to prove you that text is boring. You don't need to read this, and wireframe is fun. Okay? So you probably can get more information from this because you already know how many screens there are, that you have two parallel flows, and you have a couple of actions here. I just wanted to show some pictures in this talk. Yeah, the practical part. Wireframing tools. To make it a little bit more interactive, can you name any tools you can use for wireframing? Balsamic, yeah.
Draw.io is also now good.
Draw.io, okay.
Cool. Wireframe.com.
Okay, cool. The first group of tools is actually the physical ones. The most old good things, yeah. It is actually a good candidate for wireframing, especially if you just start wireframing with your team. So the advantages are it's quick, you don't have to learn. It's almost free, you still have to buy your pen and paper, but still. The minuses are also obvious. It's hard to edit, to share, to edit collectively, and it's less cool than digital things, right? There are also general purpose apps like Figma or Sketch or Mira. And the good things are they are powerful tools, and you probably already have one or two of them, and you've paid for some of them, and you probably know how to use them. Not for wireframing, but you at least know where the menus are located and what you should press and how you log in and so on. The minuses are they are not specialized for wireframing, so it's a little bit less quick to use them for wireframing compared to specialized tools, which is the third group, but I will show you it later. And the one more disadvantage here is that it encourages you for decoration. One case from my experience is when we passed the wireframing job from me to our product manager. She started wireframing in Figma because she knew that tool, and she just thought it would be the quickest way for her to use Figma for drawing. and she ended up with pixel perfect layouts instead of wireframes because, yeah, she just wanted to make everything beautiful. So I think this is the downside of this set of apps. And there are obviously specialized apps for wireframing. They are the best, like digital tools for wireframing. You can do everything quickly. They have only the necessary menus everywhere. And you can wireframe really fast with the use of them. The minuses are they all have some learning curve, which is not that big. It's like half an hour of your life, but still it has needs some time to learn. They require some money. They are usually not free of charge, and as far as they are not that big, they have a smaller community. They are so narrowly specialized, so they have probably less support, and they can be a little bit more glitchy than the general purpose apps. So whatever you choose, if it works best for you, this is a great choice. One more practical question is who should draw it in your team? If you don't have a designer, who should be the wireframer? If you like the idea, you can probably start with yourself, especially if you are a front-ender. Why a front-ender is a good candidate for this job? Because front-enders have seen a lot of interfaces. They know how they usually look like. They know patterns, they know best practices, and also they win the most from wireframing among other team members, because if this job is not done by anyone, a front-ender at the end has to do it all in their head. So it's better to do it visual for everyone in the team instead of doing everything in your head and planning the user interaction things and just implementing them straight away. But also it can be a product manager, and basically anyone who is into drawing and knows the product well and has some time, like a QA engineer probably knows the product better than anyone else. Or it can be a designer if they, for example, don't have time for pixel perfect layouts for you, but they have some time for wireframing, then the designer is the best candidate for doing a designer's job. Yeah, so the conclusion. Never skip design phase when implementing complex feature. I would like to encourage you to never skip the design phase, because you think you can save time by this, but actually you just lose time in the end, because you write code then that you will throw away and you rebuild everything if you have, if you have no design at all. So the whole team wins and you save time. And yeah, why I am talking about this at the JS conference, because wireframes are the most useful for front-end developers. Thank you so much for having me here. Add me on LinkedIn, and if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer.